So this video is all about the 2018 Medicaid asset and income limits, plus some analysis of those limits. So every year they change some of these numbers that affect whether somebody qualifies for Medicaid if they go into a nursing home, and whether they have to spend their own assets to pay for the care, maybe $5,000 or $6,000 a month, or whether Medicaid covers the care. So these numbers change. Let's jump right into it. I'll start with the countable resource limits. And there's really three of them. For 2018, this number hasn't changed. If a single person, most people have heard of this before, if a single unmarried person goes into a nursing home, Medicaid looks at they apply for Medicaid. There's an application process. Medicaid looks at the countable resources. Countable resources are pretty much anything other than somebody's home and car. Their bank accounts, their savings, their CDs, their stocks, bonds, mutual funds, business interests, retirement accounts. If they have more than $2,000, they don't qualify for Medicaid. They got to spend those assets until they have less than $2,000 remaining. That's the limit for a single person. If it's a married couple and both spouses are going into the nursing home together, then the married couple must spend all their assets down to less than $3,000. And so that's when the assets really go. You think a nursing home is expensive, try to pay for it when you have both a husband and wife in there at the same time. They'll blow through maybe $12,000, $14,000 a month, and they'll get no help from anybody until they spend the assets down to less than $3,000. A different rule for married couples, one spouse in the nursing home, that spouse is called the institutionalized spouse. One spouse not in the nursing home, that spouse is called the community spouse because they're still living in the community. And the rationale is the community spouse needs some assets to live off of. So what they do is they look at the combined assets of both spouses in those circumstances. And if that number, the brand new number, $123,600, up from $120,900 in 2017. So give you an example, husband and wife. Husband goes into the nursing home, wife stays at home, they have a house, they have a car, they have $100,000 in the bank, that's it. Husband would qualify for Medicaid because he's under the $123,600 spousal resource limit. It's really $125,600 because the spouse who's at home gets $123,600. The institutionalized spouse gets $2,000. Put it together, $125,600. Now, note for purposes of that calculation, they don't care about whether something's community or separate property. They just lump all the assets of both spouses together. So having separate property doesn't protect it if you're at home and your spouse is in the nursing home. They look at the combined assets of both couples, both spouses. Okay, another couple of numbers. I mentioned earlier the home is not a countable resource. A lot of people refer to it as an exempt asset, but there's a limit on how much of the value of your house can be exempt. And for 2018, that number is $572,000. That's your home equity limit. So if somebody has less than $2,000, they're a single person, but they've got a home and a car, and their home is worth $700,000. They're not going to qualify for Medicaid because their home equity limit, $572,000. Their home's worth too much. I suppose they either have to sell the home, spend assets down, maybe get and I don't know if this strategy works, get a loan against the home to bring the equity amount down, but then those loan proceeds would have to be spent because those loan proceeds would be a countable resource. So anyway, just know that there's a $572,000 home equity limit for people in Louisiana. That's up last year from $560,000 for 2017. Another calculation I want to go through is, so that's all about the assets. What assets does somebody own, and do they become eligible, or do they have to be a private pay patient, spend their own assets? Now we're going to talk about income. And really we're going to talk about income in relation to a married couple under that scenario where you have an institutionalized spouse and a community spouse. The rationale here, just like the rationale for the assets, the one who stays at home needs some assets and some income to live off of. So the way that works, I'm going to give you the number first. For 2018, the some people call it the spouse's monthly maintenance needs. I think Louisiana calls it the spouse's maintenance needs. The number is $3,090 of monthly income. So let's talk about what that means. If I were to take it to the next step, I would say that, and I've got to go a couple of steps beyond that, the spouse who stays at home in the community is entitled to keep the first $3,090 of monthly income. Now, taken to the next level, for the asset test, they don't care whose assets they are. But for the income test, it matters whether, kind of whose name is on the check. So the community spouse always gets to keep all of their income no matter how much it is. But let me give you a different example. Let's say each spouse is getting $2,000 of monthly income, pension, Social Security, other income, and we know that the spouse's maintenance needs is $3,090 of monthly income. Well, the community spouse is getting $2,000. The community spouse always gets to keep their income, so they're going to get to keep that $2,000 of income. But the institutionalized spouse is also getting $2,000 of monthly income. And so what happens is the community spouse gets to keep, I'll call it her $2,000, and she gets to keep enough of the husband's or institutionalized spouse's income to get her up to $3,090 a month. So she would keep her $2,000, she'd keep $1,090 of his $2,000, and then the other $910 of his monthly income would be assigned to the nursing home, and then Medicaid would pick up the rest. That all assumes they've passed all of the asset tests. So we just, made an analysis of the income. Note that there's a couple of other small exceptions. People in a nursing home get to keep $38 of their monthly income as a personal needs allowance. They get to pay for their health insurance out of their income. So there's a couple of little exceptions to that rule. And then really the last rule I want to go over is the penalty number for transferring assets out of someone's name. Big issue here. A lot of people wait too late. They get caught. So let me give you an example. Let's say a single person mom has $100,000. She has a house and a car. She's about to go into the nursing home in the next couple of months. And the family starts to realize, uh-oh, mom has too much. They say she can only have $2,000. We got to get that stuff out of her name. So mom transfers the money out of her account into, let's say, the two kids. She gives the money to the two kids, $50,000 apiece. 3 months later, mom goes to apply for Medicaid. She has less than $2,000 in her bank account. Medicaid, there's a Medicaid application process. They examine everything. In addition to examining all the records, they ask her, have you transferred anything out of your name in the last 5 years? Yeah, about 3 months ago, I transferred $100,000 to my two children. So what that does is it triggers an ineligibility penalty period. So what happens is the number that I'm trying to get to is $4,000. That's the in fact, Louisiana calls it the average monthly cost for private patients of nursing facility services. So that's what Louisiana deems to be the average cost of nursing home in Louisiana. But that number falls short of the real average cost because that 4,000 number has been 4,000 since 2007. More than 10 years, Louisiana established that number. And the reality is the nursing home costs go up significantly every year, year after year. But nonetheless, what happens to mom is they do a mathematical calculation. Because mom transferred $100,000 out of her name within the last 5 years, they are going to divide that $100,000 by $4,000, the average cost of a month in a nursing home, at least as determined by Louisiana, but hasn't been adjusted in 10 years. Comes up with a 25-month penalty period. So mom is ineligible for Medicaid for 25 months from the date that she's in the nursing home and applies for Medicaid and deemed eligible for Medicaid except for the fact that she made a transfer in the past 5 years. That penalty period doesn't start when mom made the transfer. It starts later when mom's in the nursing home, applies, and gets denied. So that's another number that is subject to change, but quite frankly, the lower that $4,000 number, the longer the penalty period, they really ought to adjust that number. It's been $4,000 for more than 10 years. So there you have it. If you want to know more about this, you need to, I just made a podcast. It lasts much longer. It's 20-something minutes. It's more analysis. Podcast is called Estate Planning with Paul Rabelais. Go check that out. You can listen to it during your drive or your walk or whatever, and you'll hear more of the same, but a little bit, we'll go a little bit deeper in that podcast. So asset limits, $2,000 for single person, $3,000 for married couple if they're both in the nursing home, $123,600 if you have a spouse still in the community, plus the $2,000 for the spouse who's institutionalized. You've got the new spouse's maintenance need, monthly income. Spouse at home gets to keep the first $3,090 of monthly income. That number's up from last year, $3,022.50. All this means is you got to plan ahead. For estate planning purposes, you can plan right before you die, even though nobody knows when they're going to die. But for nursing home purposes, you got to plan at least 5 years in advance of a nursing home situation. So people in their 60s, maybe their mid to late 60s, clearly people in their 70s are addressing this kind of stuff. When people get in their 80s, they start wondering, is it too late? For people in their 90s, they kind of have convinced themselves it's too late because they don't have 5 years based on their health. So really, there's a right time to engage in all of this. Note that I gave you the numbers for Louisiana. It can change from state to state. So if you do live in South Louisiana and want to talk about how you can protect things, you can find out more by going to our YouTube channel, Rabelais Estate Planning LLC. You can go to our podcast, Estate Planning with Paul Rabelais. You can watch more videos. You can go to our website, RabelaisEstatePlanning.com. Or to get started with a discussion about how you can put a program in place, you can contact our office, 866-491-3884, or the local number in Baton Rouge is 225-329-2450. Hope this helps. Subscribe to all those things so you get the latest. And have a great day, and take care of business timely. Get it right the first time. See ya.